All right, guys. I wasn't going to talk about anything today. I was just going to ride because it's pretty nice out. It's like 55 degrees right now. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Not too bad at all. Yeah, every time I drive down this road, it reminds me of the ex-wife. I think that getting cheated on, it isn't really the anger of like the fact that they betrayed you kind of thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that wasn't really the biggest part, because it's like, I can understand cheating, I mean, I'm not perfect. I also cheated back in the day on some girlfriends as well. And, I get where it comes from, but I think the thing that really hits home is that the relationship is over at that point. And there's no going back. Like you can't uncheat and fix the problems. And I think that is one of the biggest things that hit for me was that it's over. Like, even though I really tried to stretch it out, I tried to get her to come clean, and tried to make her do a whole bunch of things, which is just stupid, because realistically you can't make anybody do anything. The only thing you can do is control your reactions. Oh nice, there's a train. You can only control your reactions, and there's not much you can do to change somebody else. And if somebody's not willing to admit that they cheated and that they were wrong, I think that's the biggest problem, and that's why the relationship's going to be over. There was no accountability. There was no, I'm sorry. It was mostly, well, you caused this. And it's like, well, yeah, I get it. There are things that maybe I did wrong and whatnot, but like, you crossed that line, and I mean, I wasn't perfect, but the fact that there's some issues there, and it just means that the relationship is over at that point, and that really sucks. I guess I could deal with somebody cheating, but really they'd have to take accountability for it, and even then, I still, you'd have some serious issues with that. It's not the fact that they were with somebody else, especially for girls. That's really easy for them to just move on to another guy, which it is what it is. But it's the real thing is that it's like they chose that the relationship was over at that point, and instead of telling you, they go and try to burn it down with fire, I guess. But it's like, for me, I'm just like, nope, it's not something that I see. I see the worst in everybody because of that hypervigilance, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that's hurt me the most throughout my entire life, really, because I'm not just talking about my ex-wife. I'm talking about multiple girlfriends throughout the years, my son's mom, a whole bunch of different stuff, and I've just been taken advantage of and cheated on a whole bunch, and that coupled with the flip switch, that I think that was also another big one, was the flip switch, was when the girl goes from she's hanging out with you, and she's loving on you, and you're like her only one, and then she goes from that to all of a sudden you're abusive and you did these things, and then she's blaming you for fucking everything. And it's just like, really? Like, just last week you were telling me that I was such a good boyfriend, or such a good husband, and then now you're saying that I was abusive, and then they become vindictive, and that really hurts too, because it's like, you thought the whole time you're in this relationship that they were a good person, and it turns out that maybe they're still a good person at heart, but like their actions are really showing that they're not a good person. their actions are showing that they're obviously very vindictive and childish. Maybe not very mature in that sense. It really hurts, but like I said before, there's only one thing you can really do, which is learn from the experience and move on, and have lessons learned. And I think for me, the main lessons learned. But come on, baby. For me, the lessons learned really were, for example, the red flags that I ignored. I think that's one of my biggest ones that I noticed after looking back on my last relationship. The red flags that I ignored. Like a great example is when my ex-wife and I, we first got together. She took my phone and copied all of the girls' names in there. She copied all the girls' names in there, and then she went and called them all while I was at work one day. And I only figured out that because one of the girls had contacted me at work, and it told me, was like, hey, some crazy girl called me and asked if we had hooked up and stuff. And I was like, no way, that's crazy. And then later on I approached her and I was like, hey, did you do this? And she was pretty forthcoming. She wasn't afraid to say, yeah, she did it, but she wasn't sorry for it. And then she justified it with, oh, well, you're a man whore and you could cheat on me at any moment, and all these different toxic things that a good girl would not do. And of course, at the time I completely ignored that. The thing I did was I justified it in my mind like, oh, she must like me. She must really care about me. That's why she doesn't want me to cheat on her. Little did I think, I didn't think anything about oh, she's trying to control me, trying to lock me down so that I have no other options, so that it's easier for her to control me. And that I think was one of the big ones that I kind of see now as I look back on it, oh, okay, that makes sense. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just been like, yeah, this isn't gonna work out. I think we're gonna move on and part ways.